Hi, I'm Jennifer Rulins, co founder and broker of One Focus Property Management. I'm here to bring you another tip about how to manage your property better and more successfully. So, I meet with tons of rental property owners, and as part of meeting them, I often ask about their properties. How are they performing? How are tenants paying? And it's not unusual to hear that they have a handful of tenants in their portfolio who are regularly paying the rent late. They're paying it, and they're usually paying it inside of the month it's due, but instead of paying it on the first, they're paying in the middle of the month or possibly at the end of the month. And when I talk with these clients, I say, well, that is not a stabilized property. We need this property to be collecting the rent on time in a timely manner. And they say, I get it, Jen, but I really like this tenant. I don't want them to be kicked out. I think they're good and we should keep them. And I say, of course we should keep them. But we do have to get that rent paid on time. So there's got to be a compromise that can be worked out. And usually that's where people stop. They don't see how it can be worked out, but I'll share with you my tip. So, what I'll do with a tenant who consistently is paying late is either at that point, usually you have to renew their lease, or in some other way, we bring up the lease and we remind them, your rent is due on the first. And that's really something we need to strive for. And so, together, what we're going to do is work out a payment plan. And what's great about this payment plan is that you're going to work together to help us set it. It's going to work on getting you to where you're paying the rent at or before the due date instead of after it. And in exchange for this payment plan, you're not going to charge them any late fees during the time when they are paying the rent late until they are off this plan. And so, how this usually looks, because most people go, where are the tenants going to find the money? We're going to find the money in how regularly they're paid. So, employees are generally paid every week or every 2 weeks. And so, I usually will ask my tenants, hey, how are you paid? Weekly or bi weekly? When they're paid weekly, I ask for them to pay 25% of the rent with each paycheck each week. That's the payment plan. And bi weekly, I'd say I want half the rent with each paycheck. Now, how does that ever get us caught up? Well, it gets us caught up because there are actually 26 pay periods in a year if you're doing biweekly, or 52 weekly pay periods. Essentially, if they give you either a quarter or a half of the rent on that schedule for an entire year, they will have paid 13 months worth of rent in a 12-month rental period. So you see how this is really ideal for those tenants who are paying within that month that it's due. So they're not severely delinquent. They don't have months worth of arrears. They just have 1 month or less. Within 1 year, I can get them caught up paying ahead of time, not behind. And we do this simply by teaching them a little money management tool and making it into a payment plan. Now, here are the conditions of this payment plan, and it may be very long because we might list 1/4 of the rent payment every single week for a whole year. It could go that far. So, what you're giving to the tenant is here's the schedule of payments that gets you on time, and I'm not going to charge you any late fees as long as you're adhering to this payment plan. So you're giving them something there. You're also protecting them. They now have a document that says it's understood and acknowledged this special arrangement you have. Because at any point, if you didn't have that, really you could take action, filing late fees and filing for an eviction. It's not a secure place for them to be. By the way, them paying late and you doing nothing about it ever is also not a secure place for you to be as a landlord. I'd really rather see you defending yourself with a written payment plan. So, when that tenant successfully completes that payment plan, what I found is that many of them do continue with that same payment schedule, which builds up prepayments over time, giving them a cushion. And for people who do live paycheck to paycheck, those sorts of cushions are very typical financial management tools that they'll use to make sure that their most important bills, like rent, are consistently paid. That's the good scenario. The bad scenario is if the tenant does not keep that payment arrangement. I think that's truly a sign they're not able to afford the housing. They're not going to be qualified to remain in the property long term. And I think at that point, you've done what you need to do as the rental property owner. You've worked with them. But at this point, now you would charge late fees and follow a normal collections process toward an eviction if the balance wasn't settled. Of course, we always hope that it's just a small temporary hardship. The tenant can make it back and get back on track. But in the event that they can't, that was going to happen without the payment plan, to be clear. It's not like you had a great tenant to start with. Okay, so all of this to say, if our tenants are not paying on time, we're going to make payment plans to get them paying on time, protect ourselves, and protect them. Please let me know in the comments if this was helpful or if you have other questions that you'd like to know more about.